Welcome to the 2 for 1 podcast. I am your host, Bacon, the pointlessly pontificating Planeswalker, here as always with my compatriot.
I'm Zimu. I'm just here, happy to be here. I don't have all these titles. I don't know where you keep coming up with titles.
Honestly, I like the sound of my own voice, hence the podcast. But that's really what it comes down to.
Relatable. Hence the podcast.
So as always, we are brought to you by a classic Magic the Gathering 2 for 1 Thoughtcast, where you spend one card to draw two. Ta freaking da.
Yep. Pretty basic one, but this 2 for 1 sort of builds off of your other, resources, your other assets, and sort of dovetails into our topic today, which is how to build and maintain a Magic the Gathering collection.
Paper Magic.
Paper Magic.
Absolutely. That's something that a lot of people, it brings a lot of people into the game. Folks like to collect stuff. With the Post Malone $2.5 million Madness card out there, a lot of folks have suddenly realized that, hey, Magic the Gathering is a pseudo asset class now. And a lot of people have been getting into it with looking to just build something for themselves. So we figured, why not talk about it as two players who have had collections at various states.
Yeah, and on the other side is there's a bunch of people for whom the collection aspect is the bother. They just want to play the game, and they have to figure out a way to do that as sort of an incidental thing. So we want to sort of help both people out. To the people who can't be bothered, we want to tell them, hey, this is how we do it, and how maybe you can do it. And the people who do it, well, here's some more tips.
Exactly. So for whether you're an old pro who's just looking to expand a little bit, whether you're looking to get into the gameplay aspect of it, or whether you're looking to suddenly build up a financial portfolio, as strange as that sounds to hear, there's going to be at least some tidbits in this for you. So
yeah, and for most people, they say like, oh, it shouldn't be a financial thing. It should be game pieces. The fact of the matter is, you're going to have to spend money on cards. It's going to be a financial hit to you at some point. So mitigating that, even if you're not trying, we're not trying to tell you how to make $1 million buying a 50-cent card and selling it for $2. We're trying to tell you how to not get slammed when the card you want gets spiked to $50.
Exactly, yeah. It's always tricky. So regardless of how you feel about things like the reserve list and Magic as an asset, which personally I'm not a fan of, it's the reality. So this is how to help navigate that. Yeah, let's jump in.
All right. So there's a couple different ways that people maintain collections, and they are sort of disparate. They're mutually exclusive. So the way that I do it is I own a collection. I've played since Judgment, and I never sell my cards. I maybe trade some, but for the most part, card goes in my cardboard boxes in the other room. It is still there.
Can confirm.
And then there's another sort of person who just finds a deck they want, buys it outright, and that is their collection. When they want a new deck, they sell their deck and buy a different deck.
See, I have been on both sides of that spectrum because during the nasty Rona lockdown, I went through a little bit of a financial situation, and I had to sell off most of my collection. That being said, I still wanted to play the game and be able to afford to play the game without having to spend all my ruples on it. So I went from temporarily, I was a massive collector. I had tons and tons of really, really good stuff. And then I had to consolidate down to a single deck. And then I sold that deck because it kind of fell out of favor with Modern Horizons 2 coming out in order to start my new collection up again. So I've been on sort of both sides of this, and long-term viability, especially with the way that they're producing new sets, I would have to say that collecting is most likely going to be the thing that ends up netting you profit instead of bleeding you dry. Like when I had to sell my collection, I've been buying it back steadily, and because of price shifting, I've actually made a pretty decent profit selling the cards that I did. So that's just my 2 cents on it, having been on both sides. That being said, if you're not interested in collecting, fine, go ahead and sell cards to people like us, and we'll be happy to take them off your hands, and we'll see you at F&M. It'll be a good time.
Yeah, like anytime you sell a card to a store or a person, you're usually taking a bit of a loss both ways, buying or selling the card.
Yep.
So just, having the card in perpetuity is usually good, but, sometimes MH2 happens and then every other modern deck kind of just dies, and it's worth it to maybe short the cards by selling them and buying them back cheaper.
Yep, that's what happened with me with my Snapcaster Mage, for example. It was like $40-$50 at one point. I sold them at like 35, and now they're like 10.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
I mean, it's good when you can do it, but that was sort of like the standard cycle when people actually played standard. Was there'd be this like $50 standard card, and everyone knew that it was not going to, it wasn't seeing play in modern. Everyone knew that the Meat Hook Massacre was just not going to be a $50 card after rotation.
Yep.
So anyone who was fast enough to get rid of them, or could afford to not play with them for the last 3 months of their life cycle in standard, just able to get a bit more value and then buy back in if they needed it.
But for the most part, once cards rotate into Eternal formats, they tend to just go up in value.
Yeah.
When it's most people that sell their collection regret it deeply.
Yeah.
Even with me making stuff, I wish that I didn't have to do that. There was a time where I sold my collection before that. It was in college to buy books that I never read, and let me tell you, the short gains that I got out of this COVID sale are nothing compared to the losses that I took by selling my Gaia's Cradles at $200 a pop, thinking I was clever Dan, but that was incorrect.
Yeah.
These cards really do accumulate in value, which is the biggest proponent of collecting. So you have them, you can use them, and when you want to use them, you don't have to spend like $1,000 on a Gaia's Cradle because you had the good sense to buy it from me when it was $200 a pop. And so that's one of the things worth considering, definitely.
The easy way to think about it is the cheapest these cards will ever be is when they're in print, right? They make a card that's good and sought after, and when you can't buy it anymore, you can't open a pack and get it anymore, it sounds like there's a fixed amount of them in the world, and you have to wait for a reprint for it to go down, which is a strategy that we'll be talking about.
Yep.
But yeah, let's move on.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple different ways to reconcile this not collecting thing, and you can mix it match with actually owning a collection too. Is if you have access to a friend group, you can borrow cards from them. Might sound crazy to some of you, but you can only play 75 of your cards at any one time, right?
Yep.
So all the rest of them are available to loan, and all your friends also have them available to loan.
It's really important, especially when you're doing things like supplementing the income that you put into this with F&M earnings. Like, you can do it a lot easier with a bigger card list. Now, one of the things that I always recommend, but never do myself because I just haven't done, is get a receipt for the cards that you loan out and the cards that you borrow. A piece of paper saying, at this point in time, I loaned this person these cards to be returned here. And that is just, everybody trusts their friends. I trust my friends. But it's really, that piece of paper will just help mitigate any sort of drama in moving forward and any of that kind of stuff.
We have a Discord channel for our group, and we have a channel called Life from the Loans, where people just say, I borrowed 2 Shieldrids from this person, and when we're returning them back, I put a message like replying to the previous one. I returned the 2 Shieldreds, one of them.
Yep.
But a lot of people will just forget that you loan them cards.
Yep.
I have the person that I borrowed these Shieldreds from, I also borrowed 2 Cavern of Souls from them. And at one FNM, I like several months after I borrowed them, I was like, I still have your caverns. Do you need them back? And they're like, whoa, you have my caverns? Happy day, I just got 2 more Cavern of Souls that I didn't know about. I was like, oh, must be nice to be that trusting, but
it's funny because like one of the players that we play with, Paul, I've been friends with him since like middle school. And he loaned me a foil Mystic Snake when Apocalypse was being printed, and I like just handed that thing back to him like 2 weeks ago. But yeah, no, it's a good way of honestly FNMs, if you can do consistently well at them, borrowing a deck so that you can get store credit to purchase the cards that you want. A huge way. Another thing that you can do that I've had great success with, because I've had to rebuild my collection now twice. I'll find the easiest, most consistent, cheapest standard or modern aggro deck that I can get that uses like uncommons and stuff, and I'll just grind that at FNM. It's not the most fun, but like for $70 you can build a deck that like just turns creatures to the side, and you'll consistently get product or store credit at the FNMs go to. It's not a terrible thing. You won't take down many FNMs, but you'll get into the prizes.
Yeah.
And that is something that can really help accelerate. But, let's say you're doing that, right? You're borrowing the cards, you got a deck together somehow, whether it's a cheap aggro deck or just something that you're really good at piloting.
Some people just have an extra deck that they can loan you. Just a full deck sleeved together, just like, I didn't know if I was going to play widgets or constructs today, and you're just like, I'll take widgets if you're taking constructs.
Yep. That's happened to me on more than one occasion. I've both been the borrower and the lender, and it's always fun kind of throwing yourself into that. But let's say you've got that covered, right? You've got the deck down, you're at the tournament, you're doing well, you got this store credit. How do you determine what cards you're going to buy?
So there's a couple ways to go about this. With the collection way, I like to do what I call a rotating collection. So let's say you have Murktide as your deck. You bought Murktide, okay? So you have Furies, you got maybe a couple Furies. It's in the range. You have Ragavans. What do you want to do? Those are your sort of like flag post, like expensive cards that I own that go in other decks. You're like, okay, I have Ragavans. That's like one of the most expensive cards in Scam, let's say. So just sort of like, okay, I have a couple Furies, a couple Ragavans. I can build Scam if I just get Griefs, and all the commons that bring back a creature are like a couple bucks. Dothies are a little bit, they're not super expensive, I don't think. So you're just like, okay, I'll get those, 20 cards, or it's probably more. But you have Lightning Bolts in your Murktide deck, those also go in Scam. You just like slowly add on to your collection. Now I have the Scam cards. Okay. Where can you go once you have Murktide and Scam? I don't know, you've got Reefs, Blood Moons, Fables. Maybe you could do like a Reanimator deck with the Griefs and the Fables, and you sort of just like branch out. It works a lot better in a format like Modern, where all the decks kind of just play elementals or whatnot. Like once you get, Solitudes and Furies, like the whole swath of decks are open to you as close to getting. Like we mentioned the buy a deck kind of player. Like when you go to MTG Goldfish, there's a button like buy this whole deck. I've never clicked that button. I've never been come close to that. I know some people do. I was once sitting down, like shuffling up a storm or something, like
Storm.
quiet you, and some like little kid like watched me like win a game or something, and he's like, "How much did that deck cost you?" And it's like, "Cost me. I bought the 4 pyretic rituals I needed, and then I had it." Like, I don't know what it cost me. I just had most of the cards, and I got the couple cards I needed.
That's definitely like one of the better ways to do it. I did the same thing with I've been a control pilot for a very long time, like since Wrath Cycle, and so it like for me when I was playing Modern was around when Splinter Twin was legal, so I would do the same thing. I had my Snapcaster mages, I had my Lightning Bolts, I had the Colonnades, and just a couple other of the cards that were there. And so it built from there out to Splinter Twin. It built from Splinter Twin out to a Kiki combo. It built Kiki combo out to Birthing Pod, and then by the end of that, like you had it. Now, one thing that I think is worth mentioning, just because I think this goes across all formats, really, is that if you have the ability to invest in the mana base of the deck, invest in the mana base of the deck. And that goes especially like so for vintage that can be a little tricky because dual lands are kind of pricey right now. But if you're looking at
vintage is workshops.
Oh my, yeah. So,
bazaars.
Yeah, like it's a little pricey. Like all of it's a little pricey. Once you start getting into dual land workshop bazaar prices, it like now you're talking about financial decisions. You need to discuss that with your wife.
We'll talk about dual lands later in the reserve list, but we'll get to that. But yeah.
But like so if you're getting into it and you want to get into modern, you want to get into commander, you want to get into standard, well standard doesn't apply as much, but especially for like eternal formats. There's fetch lands and there's shock lands. Fetch lands are the ones, obviously, I'm sorry if I'm repeating this for most of you, that you tap them, sack them, pay a life, you get one of 2 different types of lands, like a forest or an island. And shock lands count as 2 different types of lands. When they come into play, it's tapped unless you pay 2 life, and then they come into play tapped. And they go through expense cycles. So
yes.
you'll see it goes through this like sine wave of pricing, and when you see it dip down to like the $20-$30 range for fetch lands and the $10-$20 range for shocks, you want to start buying those up because they are the foundation of your Magic collection, in my opinion. Like your fetches, your shocks, you need those. They really do make such a huge difference in any deck. You take a deck that doesn't have shocks in it and fetches, even if it's a monocolored deck, and then suddenly you put the fetches in it that like are in that color. Suddenly it's just 10 times more consistent because you're filtering out lands.
So a couple things about that. That's a good place to park your money when you don't know what you want is lands. Like if you just have the mana base, you're kind of just set for a deck almost no matter what, and you're always going to need lands. And some red-black deck you build might have Croxa, it might have scam cards like Grief or Fury. Those cards might get banned, but they're not going to ban Bloodstained Mire. Unless it's Pioneer when they banned it at the start. But the lands are just like so fixed, so set as just like you need these, and you're always going to need them. You always run into that sort of more casual players like, well, I don't play green. Which is always weird to me, because, like, what if they print a cool green card that you like? And all of a sudden, like, oh,
I guess I'll play green.
I'll play green. Or, they print a green card that mills you a bunch, and it's good in a reanimator strategy. And it's like, oh, maybe I'm a green player now, because I'm a reanimator player.
That's out some Life from Loam or
Fauna Shaman.
Yeah.
Like, maybe a Fauna Shaman reanimate deck happens in Pioneer.
6 creature that's always been
Golgari Grave Troll?
Thank you. Oh my god, I played Dredge for years and I couldn't name Golgari Grave Troll. I will turn in my nerd card at the end of this recording. I am so sorry, people. But, no, it's...
And, sorry, you were saying the price fluctuations? Mm-hmm. That is a great thing to pay attention to. So, a sort of trick... in the, clickbaity sense, but also in the real sense, is there's only so much demand for Magic cards and Magic decks that reflects in their prices. Everyone says like, oh, they should just reprint dual lands and then Legacy will be affordable. Well, the whole thing about Legacy is all the cards are so cheap because the dual lands take all the value. Like, no one wants to buy any, Burning Wishes or whatever because they say, okay, I'll buy the Burning Wishes. Oh, wait, I'm still $5,000 from this deck because I don't have any dual lands. And then they sell the Burning Wishes to the next fool who thinks they're going to buy into Legacy, starting with Burning Wishes.
Honey, you mind if we refinance the house so I can buy a Bayou?
So, like you were mentioning the fetch lands, the ones that were just reprinted just like 2 years ago, the ones that were reprinted in Modern Masters 2 are way cheaper than the Onslaught ones, which weren't reprinted for 2 more years at least, maybe 3.
Dragons? Cons?
No, they were in Master set.
Like, yeah.
I think it was like the last Masters. There was like a multicolored Masters. That was the last time those were printed. So buy buy the cheap fetches, whatever they are at the current time, because that will change depending on when you watch this. Pick up the cheap fetches while they're cheap, and then when they reprint the other fetches, and then they both, swap, they just play jump rope with that $40 line or whatever it is.
They really do.
You just get the cheap ones then. So, like, the whole MTG Goldfish, like, oh, buy this deck at this price. That's not what the deck is worth if you build it over time. Go, oh, these cards are cheap now, I'll get them and save them for a rainy day. And then they print the other card, and then all of a sudden, oh, I can get the other cards I need, and I don't care that the old ones maybe are more expensive now because I just have them.
It's funny too because card prices being affected by other card prices, and you look at fetch lands in particular. The ones that get blue tend to be more expensive than the ones that don't, and that's also because of the same effect. Everybody needs EDH, everybody needs blue and vintage and legacy and all that good stuff. But it's definitely get your fetches too. So
get your blue fetches for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are worth it. So we have a framework here. You need your mana base, and then you need the cards that are important for the deck that you want to play. But what if you want to go wide on your collection? What if you want to get cards that are good that you think could go up in value, or that you think could end up finding a home? How do you go about doing that?
So I'm a dirty combo player. There's a concept called combulk. Portman 2, a combination of 2 words of combo and bulk. So there's this certain type of card that's worthless but has potential. So Inverter of Truth was one that I noticed. Oh, switch your library in your deck. That's a pretty big effect.
Yeah.
Library and graveyard. It was like exile your library, your graveyard becomes your library.
Yeah, something like that.
It was a big combo in Pioneer before it got banned because it comboed with Thassa's Oracle. Exiling your library to set up your Thassa's Oracle pretty good. But that card was a mythic, 6/6 flyer, like it's a big body too. It's a bulk mythic until they printed Thassa's Oracle and everyone was like, oh, wait a minute. This is good now. Those are the cards that you can pick up for 50 cents. Cheapest our store sells them for. Other stores will sell them cheap. You just want to, if you're a combo player, if you're open to playing combo, because usually like when there's a tier 0 strategy in a format, it's some combo card that popped up. You just like, it's so, the thing about Magic cards is they're all worthless till someone needs them, then they're expensive. Especially with the way they print so many cards now, is like everyone just there's enough of them to go around until it's a card in a deck that everyone wants to play, and then it sort of breaks out of the stratosphere and can't be pulled down by the weight of the card availability.
Yep.
So like you notice it on Magic Online even more, where rental bots are a thing and everyone can just rent anything. So like the the 3-mana Teferi was like your ticket card or something stupid because it was like the most valuable card in War of the Spark, most sought after card, and bots couldn't keep them in stock. So just anyone who had them was so enticed to sell them to the bot, but the bots need it as much as they can. Bots, rent-a-card services. So just like everything else in the set was just worthless.
Yep.
And that card was just like, I'm carrying this set's financial value.
It's with cards like that, you like once you play enough, you start to notice trends on what types of cards are going to spike.
Yeah.
Like when we saw that Teferi in general, it was just like, holy mackerel, this is going to be a big one.
This was on a 5-mana creature before, and now it's on
3.
a Planeswalker that draws a card, is 3 mana.
And is also Grand Arbiter for like no reason.
Yeah.
Like it's so for me, I tend to look at things like I said, I know Control more than I know anything else in terms of like 60 card pile Magic. So when I saw something like an offer you can't refuse, people would look at that and go, really? Is it that good? Like, it doesn't look that great on face value. It gets your opponent 2 treasures. It's got it's a limited counterspell, so it doesn't hit creatures. Like, is it really that good? And the answer is, oh my god, yeah. So you look at 1-mana counterspells. Even like Stern Dismissal, I think, was the one out of Lord of the Rings. The 1 blue mana gets a creature with power or toughness 2 or less. Like, that one is phenomenally good in certain formats. Like, you look at CEDH in particular, it stops so much, it does that. So once you start like seeing trends, like free cards, for example, every time there's a free card, it's good. Like Gitaxian Probe was banned, and like it basically does nothing except you look at your opponent's hand.
All free cards will all have their time. Like, people are thinking of playing Sun Scour. Exile 2 white cards from your hand, Wrath of God, because it's in Beans, it doesn't matter that you threw away cards, because you just draw them again.
Yep.
Like, I don't think that one's quite taken off, but like, people are trying.
Could be fine. I could see it being played in EDH.
Cards from Cold Snap, like, it's, if it spikes, it'll spike a lot.
Yup. Like before they reprinted the card Snap, it was like $5 a pop. That's just 2 mana for like an instant speed bounce a creature, and you untap 2 lands. That's all it does. But then you also see things like
I mean, Snap's been busted since it was.
That is a big fact.
But
But that's the archetype right there. It's it's not the most
card.
overpowered effect. Like, there's tons of stuff that bounces a creature, but now it's overpowered because you can bounce it and hold mana open for your counterspell.
The thing to consider here is value over replacement. What else does what it does? Like, Ragavan, you can replace it with a different 1-drop. You know, if they banned Ragavan, you know, you would just play slightly different decks. Like, you could play DRC and Scam. Probably not, but you know, there's other cards that replace it. But once you get rid of Grief, Scam just doesn't do what it does. Murktide, much less of a deck if they banned Expressive Iteration, because there's no way for that deck to grind other than the card advantage of Expressive Iteration.
Sometimes it's like the card is looking for a home, and that's what it feels like, and then you can pick it up dirt cheap, and then something like Pioneer comes out, and the card has a home, and it skyrockets in price too. So it's like worth noting that like they're always coming up with new sets. That's one of the issues that Wizards not new sets, new what's the word I'm looking for?
Formats?
Yes, that's the word. And they're always looking for new ways of making cards relevant. That's why they jumped on Commander, or when it came out, EDH, is because suddenly like all of these awkward, really powerful 6-7 mana cards that didn't really have a home or a purpose outside of limited or maybe like a single set in standard, like, are playable and good and viable and have a home. So when you're looking at cards and evaluating power level, like if you're going through a bulk drawer and you see something that's like, wow, this has a lot of words on it and these words do a lot of things, doesn't have a home yet, you can either find a home for it yourself in a deck that like in a format that you play, or you can hold on to it and just wait. It's not like it's a big investment for like a 50-cent bulk card that suddenly shoots up.
Bulk will be bulk forever. And the reason why it stays at bulk rate is because it will spike. Like, there's there's this thing that people used to do, is you would go somewhere and say, hey, I'm trading and I'm looking for bulk. And they would say, like, all your cards are 15 cents, trade them to me at bulk. And that was super lucrative when you were like a trade shark, because no one knows what bulk is.
Yep.
Bulk to most people is a card that I don't play.
Yep.
And people would trade, which is like hand over piles of like I traded a Flash as bulk. Granted, that was when Flash was errated to not be good, but they unerrated it, and suddenly I could have got the card I was trading for the value of that Flash. So like that's why people want to pick up bulk, is because it doesn't stay bulk. That's just how Magic works. Like, they're always printing new cards. Cards don't exist in vacuums. There's gonna be a new card that comes out as like, oh, all your snakes are better, and all this marginal card that was a snake is suddenly playable in Commander or Modern or something, and like I said, Pioneer comes out, and all these cards that were like not good enough for Modern are suddenly in vogue because they're good enough for Pioneer, which was just not a rule set we were, contending with or considering, I guess. All Commander, all the cards that were win more are suddenly win the right amount when you have 40 life and 3 opponents.
Yep. It's it gets a little crazy, and it's part of the reason why I suggest to people to basically never sell their collection unless it's for something like a complete unique experience, or to like put a down payment on a house.
Yeah.
It is because of those effects. Like, you sell them and you think you're getting a good price, but then suddenly somebody busts the door open on the card and it like shoots up 1,000%. One of my friends took advantage of that. He bought every Lotus Petal he could find when they were 50 cents to $1. He had he had thousands of them, like the boxes that are, there we go, the boxes that are like this big, just stuffed with Lotus Petals that he bought for like $1 a piece, and suddenly they shoot up to $30 a piece, and he sells them all for 20 a pop. Like, dude, put a down payment on a house. But apart from that kind of stuff, where you're obviously making like a financial play, treating it like stocks, don't sell your collection for things like for just petty stuff. Like, don't sell your collection so you can get an Xbox. Don't sell your collection so you can get a paintball gun or anything like that. If you need to repair a car and it's your like way of making money, that's probably worth it. If you're gonna have like a unique life experience, like my brother-in-law sold his collection so he'd go to Hungary and compete in chess tournaments. He's a grandmaster.
Yeah.
And so that was worth it, but make sure it's worth it, because like what I did in college, selling it for books and, let me be frank, to buy a little bit of weed, was not at all worth it, and one of the biggest regrets that I have in my life. COVID selling, it was painful, but it was completely necessary, and I was lucky to have the opportunity. So selling is easy. Let me ask you, when do you trade a card versus when do you not trade it?
So it's sort of this whole thing where we're talking about evaluating cards, and it's sort of tough that our advice is sort of understand what cards are good, just be good at knowing what good cards are, because some people are good at that and some people aren't. But I saw this financial article where someone's like tracking their like pack to power or something, and one of the trades they did was Goblin Guide at $4 for Knight of something. It was like a Night Lord, and at $4 or something. And then like later they traded the Night Lord for a Celestial Colonnade at $4. And they like looking at this 10 years later, the Goblin Guides are like $20, the Colonnades are $20, and the Night Lord is like $5 still.
Fun fact, Colonnade is like 50 cents now.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
But like you're right that
So like
for a long time Colonnade was wicked expensive.
yeah, Colonnade was really good till they printed uh cards that just made it so you can't play Control, and if you do, you're not playing it with Colonnades because like Fatal Push kills a Colonnade.
Yep.
You're not playing Snapcasters anymore, so the whole I don't have win conditions in my deck except for Colonnade doesn't really work because turns out every card's a win condition now because they just push every card to do everything. But yeah, it's sort of my biggest best trade ever was I traded Loxodon Hierarch for 2 Lion's Eye Diamonds. And I know what you're all thinking. You fool. Why would you admit that? You're some scammer. Well, back in Standard, Loxodon Hierarch was an $8 card, one of the best cards in the set. Probably don't know what it is. It's a 4-mana 4/4 that gains 4 life.
Sack it to regenerate your creatures.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Most people forget that it does that because it very rarely comes up. But yeah, it does that. But Lion's Eye Diamond wasn't popular yet.
That's crazy.
We played Legacy, and I saw someone cast Living End, sack their LED, Living End for Oyruk Champion, no, Oyruk Salvagers, and do Salvagers combo. And I was like, whoa, that's cool. I want to build that deck. So I picked up my LEDs at $4 a pop because, bro, it says discard your hand. How good can it be?
Right?
Then once people start playing Legacy and realize, oh, wait, Infernal Tutor, that's really good. So I just, traded Standard cards for Eternal cards and didn't regret it. It's that whole example of this card is clearly good in Standard and people want it, but 2 years from now, you're going to wipe the dog crap off your shoes with it.
I think that that's a really good general rule of when am I going to trade a card? When it's a Standard card for an Eternal format card, period.
Yeah.
Like, not nearly, holy crap, 2 LEDs for a Loxodon Hierarch, but, not nearly as good. One of my better trades was...
I've also traded flashes as for 15 cents towards the Force of Will, but,
Yeah. But, anytime you get the opportunity to get an Eternal card for Standard cards, it's a good time to trade those Standard cards away, even if they're in, a deck. That is just gonna be in your favor. I remember I got my first Arid Mesa, the white-red fetch land, for 4 Boros Reckoners. And the dude thought he was taking me for a ride because, that week, 4 Boros Reckoners was worth, $5 more on TCG Mid than the Arid Mesa was going to be.
Yeah.
Go look up what a Boros Reckoner is and then what its price is now.
Yeah.
And this is 2 weeks before the set rotated out. You can get a lot of really good deals from people right before a major tournament too. So that's where to trade them. People especially that are in Standard looking for those cards, and the judge is nope, it's marked. You have 20 minutes to find a new one or you're DQ'd.
Yeah.
They're suddenly they're inclined to make better deals. But the only time that I trade Eternal format cards away are when I only trade for 1 of 2 reasons. 1, I really need the card and we're equal value, or 2, I'm upvaluing it. I am getting more value out of this trade than you are based on my own. One of the factors is I use TCG Mid. I also look at what I think the card is going to do in the future. I'm always honest with people. I'm not scamming people. Listen, I don't have a plan for this card. The only reason I'd be interested in trading for it is in value, to increase the value of my collection. So find something that's $5 under, and we can make a deal. And that is how I'll do it. The exception is the reserve list. I personally hate that the reserve list exists. I think that it's really bad for the game. But that doesn't matter because it does exist. And if you get the chance to trade non-reserve list cards for reserve list cards, chances are you should take it. Because they're just going to hold their value a lot better. Most of them are really good. Just exceptionally good cards in general.
Yeah.
And, it just makes sense to trade at those points. But outside of that, like for trading standard for eternal, trading eternal for eternal when I either really need the card for a deck or when I'm getting up value, or trading eternal for reserve list. The holy grail is trading standard for reserve list, by the way. If you could do that, like, mwah.
Yeah.
But like, it's that is when I'm losing cards out of my collection, taking that chance and saying I don't think these cards are going to value any higher than that.
If you trade a lot, you can go up value and then turn it back into reserve list cards if you're good at that. But like if you're good at that, you're not watching this episode of how to build a financial collection without spending like
unless they want to troll us, in which case please comment.
Yeah, please. I mean, any viewership is welcome, but you're probably, I don't know,
too busy trading the cards.
It takes a lot of trading for that to be valuable. Like one of my best trades was right when Modern was announced. I had a bunch of Ravnica Shocks, and they were up to like 40 or something. Original Ravnica Shocks, and someone was like, "Hey, I've got 2 extra Underground Seas." I was like, "I have Shocks and a standard, zombie deck," and I traded it for one of those Underground Seas, and I did not regret it, and that person probably regretted it. But like your whole thing of like reserve list, like I don't trade my reserve list cards except for other reserve list cards.
Yep.
I have fetches are also like in a separate. I used to have them in my binders, like those are here in case you have other fetches you want to trade me, and it's like, what am I doing? I just say that to everyone, and no one wants to trade their fetches for my fetches, so I just took them out. Just like make it less weird. It is sometimes good to have your like duels in your binder, so people go like, "Hey, I need that." It's like, "Hey, I'll trade them, but I need other reserve list cards. Like I'm looking for Grim Monoliths or Gaia's Cradles."
Yeah.
Like you can get that conversation started if you have your duels in your binder that aren't for trade except for other duels that you need. But
the other way of getting these cards quickly, and I'll just touch on this briefly because it's real simple, is if you find someone getting out of the hobby and they're willing to sell their collection, typically you can get it anywhere from like 60 to 70% of the market value if you buy the whole collection in bulk. Now you got to be willing to sink like a massive amount of money into that, and I don't recommend doing that unless you have buyers lined up, because if you sell that collection to a dealer, you're going to lose money horribly. But if you buy it at 70% and you sell it at 85%, that's that nice little 15% market right there, and you can use that to get into reserve list. But that's just like that's all I'm going to say about that. It's simple buying and selling in demand. The trade off is that they will get you get 75% or 70% of like their fetches and duels, but you're also buying their bulk that's going to be absolutely fucking useless at 70% too.
that's not necessarily true. One of the perks of having a collection is I have all these bulk boxes in the room over there, and every once in a while I go through them and pull out $5 bills.
That's true.
That you didn't know that you had, because that's just old Magic cards appreciate sometimes.
Yeah.
But like a couple of my best moves have been buying people's collections. I got a Tropical Island and a bunch of Wastelands from a friend who quit, and now they're back in, and they're a bit sad to not have those cards, but help them, pay for college books or whatever they were doing.
Now, that actually brings up a good point where you need to be careful when you're buying things from individual people.
Yeah.
When there's a seller and there's a documented, like a receipt, an official receipt, they're paying taxes on this shit, and they're saying on their taxes, this is what I sold. If they sell you a fake card, you can hold them really liable and accountable for that. Whereas if you're buying something off of eBay, if you're buying from a collector that you don't know, you really need to take the time personally to be able to identify the card as real, like a jeweler's loop or something like that, or bring somebody who knows how to rate and grade cards with you to the transaction, especially if it's stuff for like reserve lists. Like very few people are going to like sell you a proxy fetch land, right? But I've seen more proxy dual lands that are scams than I care to admit. And so that's just something worth going for. And I don't suggest buying from streamers.
Yeah, I bought most of my duels on eBay, and I've looped them all and shown them to my friend who's a judge who can, verify cheats or not, and they've all been legitimate. Maybe I'm lucky, But
eBay's a little more reliable because they have a pretty hardcore policy about that.
If you are the buyer on eBay and you complain, you get what you want.
Yep.
Basically, as much as you're willing to push it. So sellers know that, and they will say like, "I'll give you your money back. Just send me the card back," even if it's.
Yep.
It always works in your favor. But yeah, just looping is not hard. You look for the rosette pattern. There's a couple things like the text is over the card, and there's some different variations that you can know. But it's a very simple process. Jeweler's loops are pretty cheap.
Like $10 on Amazon right now.
They're
I should just bought one.
hopefully for Magic.
Yes.
So yeah, it's very easy to verify cards, and just non-zero number of people don't do this, and they'll sell you their collections with fake cards and not even know.
Yeah.
Like, just because someone sold you a fake card doesn't mean they're a bad person. Most people just go through life blindly trusting people, and
like I guarantee you've had a fake $20 bill in your wallet at some point in your life.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
And there was one weird spot where okay, this is a weird tangent, but I was trading with someone and they pulled out like their collection and they just had like 30 Court of Callings or something. And my friend comes over and is like, "You might want to check that card you just traded for," because they had a bunch of chords, and that card used to be like $40 or something. So if they were, like, it's worth nothing now, but if they were a counterfeiter and they made them at 40 because it was like worth it at that time, it could mean that these other cards that they're trading for you are also counterfeit. So just because a card's cheap now doesn't mean
Yep.
it's not worth it to counterfeit, because buy a commander deck on counterfeit sites, they'll counterfeit even the basics or whatever.
Yep. And if you are going to print a proxy, make sure it's labeled as a proxy, just to avoid that. Like, even if you're not planning on selling it, Proxy the Gathering is really easy to put on a card.
Like, there's nothing wrong with wanting to play cards and not wanting to spend an arm and a leg for it, but don't introduce them to the card pool as proxies that aren't labeled.
Yep.
Because you're going to put down Magic and then 5 years later go, "Oh, I need to make a payment," and then forget that you proxied it.
Yeah.
And
I've knowingly traded for a proxy before. It was a Gaia's Cradle, and I just didn't want to go and have an order the proxy Gaia's Cradle. So
I mean, if you're getting
here you go
for like 10, if you're getting it for
$2,
a proxy,
$2,
yeah,
$2.
if you're getting it for a cheap enough price,
it was like an uncommon counterspell in a can of soda. That's
Yeah.
what I ended up trading.
like, sure, like it's fine if you know what you're getting, but don't try to pass it off.
Oh.
But get more on this whole reserve list thing. When you're buying, let's say, a legacy deck, you want to make that move to get into legacy, buy your reserve list cards first.
Oh.
So I know there was this one incidence of someone who, like, they were making videos and saying, "I'm gonna buy all the Lion's Eye diamonds because they're like $70 and it's clearly not a $70 card, so I'm just gonna buy them all." And they were posting this video on YouTube for their friends, so they like, "Hey, just so you know, I'm gonna just destroy the price of Lion's Eye diamond. If you need them, get them." And this person got really harassed for this, but the whole point is, like, everyone's like, "Oh, from the comments were like, I built all of Storm minus Lion's Eye diamonds, and now I suddenly can't afford it." But like,
if your deck hinges on like that expensive of a card, you need to get it first, because like by the time you finish building the rest of it, even without somebody trashing the price of it, just inflation alone, it's going to go up like 10-20%.
The Infernal Tutors you bought are going to go from $4 to $8 at most. The Lion's Eye diamonds going to go from 75 to 200.
Just the Mox Diamond from 50 to 500.
The best time to buy your dual lands is yesterday. Dual lands are actually sort of going down now, with like no one really cares about Legacy right now.
Yeah.
But if you look at any like 5-year period on like MTG stocks for any dual land high-end reserve list card, you're gonna be happier to have bought it 5 years ago and have it 5 years from now. It's always gonna trend up. It's gonna dip a bit at times, but if you buy it and wake up 5 years from now and look and go, oh, I have that, and you're like way happier about it than the other way.
Couldn't agree with you more.
And this leads to this weird thing. I call it the everyone is a hoarder problem. So, like I mentioned earlier, you can only play 75 cards at one point. So, most of your collection is actually just stuff you're hoarding, which is so much more exacerbated in Reserve List Eternal stuff. I own 47 duels, I think, as of now, and I don't even have my full 40 playset. I just have extras, and the reason for that is I don't want to be caught with my pants down going, oh, I need to play this. I want to play this deck in Legacy, but I don't have the duel I need. So it's just always profitable to pick them up and just have them for now, because 5 years from now they'll print this sweet blue-white card that I really want to play in Miracles, or they unban top and Miracles is back and I have my Tundras. It's you want to be a hoarder for dual lands. Everyone who has duels hoards them, just wants as many. Like I did the good thing and got my Volcanic Islands, one of the first duels I got my playset of, and I found someone selling a collection and they had 2 Volks, and that's why I have extra Volks, is because I just had to buy the whole collection, and I was kind of just happy to. That person, told me hey, just sent my family on a nice vacation. I was like, I hope you enjoy it. I will enjoy these Volks, and
I need feeling.
Yeah, I'm glad he got what he wanted.
That's what we're talking about. Sell them when you want a life experience.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's worth it for everybody.
Guy was older than me, so it was like I don't feel like he certainly knew what he had. Like he definitely wanted a good price for them, but it was like, and then another person had bulks that they wanted to turn back into cash, and I named a price, and they're like, I'll think about it. And then a couple months later, I was like, hey, you still have those bulks? And they're like, yeah. I was like, you still want the money? Yeah. I named a price. They're like, okay. I just have an extra playset of Volks just because I know I'm going to get more than I spent on them.
We should do an episode after this on trade negotiations and stuff like that, because I feel like that would be pretty good. I work in corporate sales. I studied political science. I could talk a dog off a meat wagon, and we can teach you the ways of the weirding words.
I don't want to go too deep into that, because this is a weird thing about trading now. How you cut ahead and trade now is understanding the future. Just like, oh, this card is going to go down, this card's going to go up. Like, I've seen so many trades fall through because, we're 50 cents off of equal value, and then, I'll give you 50 cents more if I know I'm getting, a land that's going to go up, and you're getting a crappy standard card that's going to go down. But old trades used to be, you knew prices and they didn't, and I don't want to encourage that model of trading.
I am really good at, and this is going to be for another episode.
Yeah.
There are.
I'm not saying that's what you're pushing.
There are ways around that.
Yeah.
Because, sure, there's a website right here that says these cards are worth this much. How much is it worth to you? What are you getting out of this? Do you need this card for a deck? Do I need this card for a deck? What value? Let's trade some dopamine here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about.
There are a lot of times where I do that appeal where I was like, I'm trading for a 50-cent common that's foil that no one ever wants. I have a weird cube where
it's a great cube.
Archetype cube. We're gonna do an episode about it for sure. Where it's just a bunch of weird cards that go in archetypes. So there's a bunch of self-mill cards. You played, Knot of the Bone. I think that one's actually common. You played Runic Repetition, Knot of the Bone in original Innistrad draft. That's a draftable archetype in my cube, and no one else wants a foil Runic Repetition except for me. So when I'm bro, you're arguing over 50 cents where you're getting a card that you'll play, and I'm getting a card that no one besides me will ever ask for. But yeah, well, that's
we'll get into that.
yeah.
I think that's a whole episode.
Yeah,
now that I think about it.
there is definitely something there. We'll get to that.
I think we're at a pretty good point where we can summarize that because like we've gone over a lot, so it's really about understanding. Build your mana base out first. Like that's if you're looking for just take away one thing and you're a new player, build your mana base out first. Like your shocks, your fetches, and if you get the chance to trade for them, get some duels because they're only going. When you're trading, like the base level is standard. Trade standard for anything, especially eternal formats. So once you get there, trade for reserve lists, and that's pretty much it.
And there are standard cards that are good in eternal formats. You can keep those. Like when you see Reflection of the Mirror Breaker, and that card's played in every format. That's the card you buy when it's $5 before it jumps to 50. Like that's the card you just get.
Exactly, like the One Ring and Orcish Bowmaster when it first came out. And then the other things are just hold on to your eternal cards and your reserve list cards until there's something like a life experience that you want, or if you have an unexpected medical expense that like someone's gonna die. That's a good time to hold on for to let go of cards. But apart from that, don't sell your collection for like anything else. Like you want that PS5, bro, just donate some plasma. You got a lot of plasma in your blood. You're not using all of it. Like you like just don't sell your cards for pointless stuff.
Yeah. If you're gonna put a down payment on a house, like that house is gonna jump up in value. Like you want to get that house, and like if you're buying a house now, it's going to be worth more in 5 years. If you're buying Magic cards now, they're going to be worth more in 5 years. No, they're both going up. You can sell things that go up for other things that go up, but don't just like, oh, I need to buy this modern deck, sell my dual land.
Yeah, if you need shelter, by all means, buy the buy the house too, even if it's not just a financial investment. But like that is sound advice. And the last thing is just have fun with it. When you're learning game, you're also learning a skill to evaluate the financial viability of cards. And like it or not, those cards are an asset class now. Collectibles are graded and insured. And I saw Magic the Gathering Collection on Antiques Roadshow. I'm not even kidding. And so, like, as you learn the game, don't just say, this card is good. Ask yourself, why is this card good? And then go deeper than it's played in this deck. Yeah. Why is Force of Will good? Because it's a free counter spell that lets you hold up other stuff. Once you understand that, not just it's played in Legacy, it's played in CEDH. Once you understand that, you can take a look at other cards and go, oh, that fits in the same niche. That's very good, and that niche happens to be valuable. I should pick this card up and hold on to it, and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And you'll have fun with it. You'll learn the game more when you do it that way, and you'll make a little bit of money or lose it, whatever. You got some cards. Have fun.
And you can borrow cards, full decks. Just maybe you're like, oh, I want to play Scam. Instead of just buying Scam, you can say like, hey, I'd like to play Scam for a week, and for an FNM, ask your friend. And if you play the deck once and realize you hate it,
waste your money.
Then you didn't waste your money. So borrow cards just to play with them, or just to try them out, or proxy just to play the deck and go, okay, this deck's like, so many people buy into the new hit card that they print and then find out that card's actually a dud and it's awful. Everyone spent like $20 and it's an awful card.
Hashtag Torrential Gear Hulk.
There was like an $8 Dredge 1 bug insect, and everyone put like one in their deck, and it was awful, like the worst card ever. Everyone just bought them at $8 because they thought it was good and everyone else was doing it, and anyone just played it for a game before buying it, they would have realized, oh, this is awful.
Yep.
But yeah, that's probably too niche for a summary, which is. But yeah, so I promote building a collection, tiptoeing around, getting this deck, buying another card added to that. Like you can like sometimes I pick up cards for decks that I'm not building just to have them. Because maybe they'll print another card, but most of the time early on you want to focus on a deck, build that deck so you have something to play.
And then focus on that archetype around the deck.
Yeah. But no, it's sort of a season to taste thing where like some people are more comfortable with, playing more decks, and some people just want to build one deck and say this is what I have. But it certainly pays off to just have a bigger collection.
Absolutely.
In our experience.
Because who knows, maybe you've gone from that guy like me who only plays the USA Control deck and that's what I do, and suddenly you open yourself up to Commander and you're like, wow, I need every card that's ever been printed. But apart from that, I mean, it's it's a good time building a collection, and honestly, I genuinely hope that the advice that we gave you here is good, and that you have a good time, and that you have financial success doing it as well. And have cards to play with your friends with, because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about.
Yeah. And I guess one more thing before we wrap it up. I did want to say the whole advice of like be good at evaluating cards. You can actually export that to other people. So I watch a lot of Twitch streamers, and when Canister really likes this card, that's usually a good sign for me to buy it, because Canister's usually on point with good cards. I know a lot of people have like their fun streamer that they watch, like, not to throw too much shade on it, but like when Todd Anderson really likes a card, I sleep. He's a fine player, but he's not Canister.
For CEDH, I like Play to Win podcast. They're really good. Like when the equivalent of that is like when Tolarian Community College, who's also one of my favorite streams, by the way. Shouts out to Tolarian Community College. He's not a CEDH player; he's a casual player. When he likes the card, like there's a chance it could go up. But when the Play to Win guys are like, this card is gonna break the format, you buy a couple of them.
I mean, it sort of cuts through. Like if Saffron Olive likes the card, it goes up just because he is who he is.
Yeah.
Even though it has no bearing on how good that card actually is. But and there's other, like Aspiring Spike likes the card, and he's the only one who can win a game with the deck that he built sometimes. So
Do you have a big sleeper hit right now? We can end on that, like a device.
Ooh, for a one card?
Yeah.
Nothing off the top of my head. I caught me off.
I got one.
I'll think about it.
Legolas. I think it's called Legolas's Instant Action. It's I wish I remembered everything. It's a 1 mana instant green, split second, which is easily the most powerful mechanic they've ever. And it gives like hexproof, and whenever the creature becomes tapped, it does something. It's kind of nuts. It's like that word vomit 1 mana instant, and it's only printed, at least as far as I'm aware. The only place I've seen it is in that like weird Galadriel art box set from the Lord of the Rings there. Legolas's Instant Action. That one, like, just the face value of it alone. 1 green mana, split second, target creature gains hexproof. Like, that is fire. That is really good.
Yeah. Protect the queen at all costs.
Yes. Galadriel in that too, by the way, I think.
I got mine.
Go.
Sanctum Weaver. 1 green, I think it's an O2. It's a enchantment creature. Tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool for each enchantment you control.
I play it in like every deck. CDA.
So there's this, what was it, Bloom Tender? It was like a $30 card that like taps for 1 mana of each color permanent you have. Like a 2-drop that can tap for 5 mana is really good, especially in Commander, and especially a card like Sanctum Weaver, which needs your deck to be built a certain way, because a lot of casual players love that, like, oh, there's a stipulation on me, I get to make decisions about my deck guided.
Yup, it is nice that way.
So I know why the Cage Birds sing, but yeah, that card is like less than $4 now, and it'll be a $40 card once people realize that it is old enough to be a $40 card.
I think you're onto something because I
have like 20 in a box.
I've been playing EDH a lot. Like, big surprise.
Yeah.
But like it's probably the most common card I've seen outside of like the staples. Like I run it in 2 decks that I play. One of them is my CEDH deck, and I've seen so many people play the Enchantress archetype, and it's in every single one of those. Yeah. Like include just like that.
If it's not in now, they're gonna print another commander that has the word enchantment written on it, and all of a sudden it'll be good.
Yeah.
It's one of those, and I don't know, I think for commander the more casual side is usually the money driver rather than competitive, but certainly doesn't hurt to be good in both.
Facts. I mean, like it's interesting because I don't want to go on a rabbit hole right as we were so close.
Yeah, we're so close to ending, and we keep sabotaging ourselves.
Like the casual commander has on less financially depending on what the card is.
Yeah.
So like Grave Pact, right? That one is a casual commander card that can be kind of played in some competitive decks, but it's because it's so old. That's why it's worth money. And whereas you see things like
it did just get a reprint.
It just got cracked a foil Grave Pack and a Bitter Blossom in the same pack. That was some dopamine right there. But you know, it's the casual scene is good, and it definitely does drive prices up a little bit. But if you can become a staple in CED, everything is so optimized. That's where you start seeing like skyrocket.
This might be another example of that whole stratosphere thing, where it's like once a card reaches a certain amount of money, they don't just reprint it. They like set it aside as like, we need a money reprint. Let's put it at Mythic.
Yeah.
Whereas like if it's cheap enough, they'll just throw it in.
Sensei's Divining Top was on.
Yeah. Like if a card's cheap enough, they'll just throw it in. Oh, Wilds of Eldraine, we need some enchantments. Give the commander players this enchantment. Let them eat cake.
Yes, and I will eat that cake with gusto.
Yeah, but once it's like a $50 card, they're like, don't give them the $50 cake.
And that is actually, I'm going to segue this back. We got this. We're going to wrap this up. But Sensei's Divining Top used to be a 50-cent uncommon in Kamigawa.
Picked up a foil at probably $2.
Yeah, $2 foil original Sensei's Divining Top on a first.
Yeah.
So hold on to your cards because that happens.
That happens. I can make a fucking house payment.
And with that, this is the 2-for-1 podcast. I am one of your hosts, Bacon.
I'm Zimu.
And it's been a genuine pleasure. If you guys have been watching this whole time, thank you so much. Go out there, trade some cards, get some money. Let's make that paper. Literally.
I mean, it's a long process, as you can tell.
Yeah.
But definitely be mindful. You know, just go through your life thinking about, you know, what's my collection now, what's it going to be later, and just, you know, optimize it.
How many people do you think we just got addicted to yard sale box digging?
Oh,
at least 3.
Yard sale's a good place to pick up cards.
Oh my god. Yeah. All right, well, with that, adios, everybody.
Adios.